At 71 years of age, I discovered that my only daughter was putting poison in my tea every single afternoon. She thought I did not know, that I would drink that tea and just not wake up the next day. But I heard everything, and I decided I was not going to die like a fool. But before we continue, check if you are already subscribed to the channel and drop a comment below. Where are you watching this video from? We love knowing how far our stories reach. I never imagined the deepest pain of my life would come from the hands of the one I carried in my womb for 9 months. My name is Barbara. I am 71 years old, and for my entire existence, I believed a mother's love was the purest, most unconditional thing in the world. I found out, in the worst way possible, that this love might not be returned in the same way. It was a regular Tuesday in November when my world collapsed. I had gone to the bathroom after lunch, like I always did. I have struggled with bladder issues for a few years, so those trips back and forth became part of my routine. Coming back down the hallway, I heard voices coming from the kitchen. My daughter, Emily, was talking to her husband, Kevin. "I already put it in her tea," I heard Emily say with a voice so cold it did not even sound like her. "In 2 or 3 days, her body is just going to give out. The doctor will say it was her heart." Nobody suspects a thing when a 71-year-old woman dies of a heart attack. My legs shook. I leaned against the wall so I would not fall. My heart raced in a way I had never felt, not even when I lost my husband 10 years ago or when I found out I had diabetes. It was a different kind of pain, starting in my chest and spreading like wildfire through my whole body. "Are you sure this is going to work?" Kevin asked. His voice was low, but I could hear every single word with terrifying clarity. "Yes, I did a lot of research. It is a natural product. Nobody is going to detect it. And with her age, her history of high blood pressure and diabetes, it will just look like natural causes," my daughter replied with a coldness that made me question if I ever truly knew her. I just stood there, leaning against the hallway wall, unable to process what I was hearing. Emily, my Emily. The baby girl I rocked in my arms for entire nights when she had colic. The little girl I drove to school every single day, through the rain or the bitter Chicago winters. The teenager I worked 2 jobs for just to pay for a private college. That woman was planning to murder me. "And the will?" Kevin continued. "Are you sure everything is in order?" "I already checked it 3 times. The house is in her name, but I am the sole heir. The apartment she rents out also goes to me. And then there are her savings, which should be around $300,000. With that, we can pay off our debts and still have enough left over to remodel our house. $300,000. They thought that was all I had tucked away. Little did they know that, over all these years working as a seamstress, making custom dresses for private clients on the North Shore, I had managed to save up way more. I had investments they knew nothing about, a savings account at a different bank, and some family jewelry my mother left me. But it was not the money that hurt. It was knowing that, to my daughter, my life was worth exactly the price of my inheritance. I went back to my bedroom in silence, like a ghost in my own home. I closed the door slowly and sat on the edge of the bed. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold them steady. I looked at the nightstand next to the bed, where the mug of chamomile tea Emily had made me half an hour earlier was sitting. "Mom, I made you that chamomile tea you love so much," she had told me with a smile. "Drink it while it is still nice and hot. It is good for your blood pressure." The mug was still there, full. I had gone to the bathroom before drinking it, and thank God, I had not taken a single sip. I picked up the mug carefully, like it was a bomb about to go off, and carried it to the bathroom. I poured the entire contents down the toilet and flushed. I washed the mug out well and dried it with toilet paper. If they came into the room, they had to think I had drank the whole thing. I sat back down on the bed and started to cry. It was not a loud cry. It could not be. They could not know I had heard them. It was a silent, deep weeping that came from the very bottom of my soul. I cried for the mother I was, who went unappreciated. I cried for the daughter I raised, who did not recognize my worth. I cried for the family I thought I had, which never truly existed. But through the tears, something inside me started to wake up. It was not anger, not yet. It was a cold, calculating determination. If my daughter thought I was going to die like a foolish old woman, she was dead wrong. I had survived 60 years of hard work. I had raised a daughter single-handedly after my husband passed away. I had overcome poverty and the discrimination of being a woman in the workforce back in the 1970s. I had fought 1,000 battles. I was not going to let this be my final defeat. Slowly, my mind started working. I needed to be absolutely certain of what I had heard. I could not confront them without proof. I could not accuse them and give them the chance to deny everything, to make me look like a crazy, senile old lady who was just imagining things. I needed hard evidence. I got up from the bed, wiped my tears, and took a deep breath. I looked at myself in the mirror and saw a 71-year-old woman with gray hair, wrinkles around her eyes, and calloused hands from working so much. But I also saw strength in those eyes. I saw resilience. I saw a survivor. I opened my dresser drawer and pulled out an old little notebook where I used to write down recipes. I started writing. The date, the time, what I had heard, word for word. Every detail mattered. Then, I hid the notebook at the very back of the drawer, under my underwear. They would never snoop around in there. When I walked out of the room 15 minutes later, my face was washed and I had a calm expression. I found Emily in the living room, watching television. "Mom, did you drink your tea?" she asked, without taking her eyes off the screen. "Yes, honey, it was delicious. Thank you so much." "That is great. I am going to make it for you every day. It is good for your health, good for my health." The words echoed in my head with a completely different meaning. I sat on the couch and pretended to watch the soap opera with her. But my mind was racing a mile a minute. Every look Emily gave me, every word she said, it all held a new meaning now. I was seeing my daughter with completely new eyes. Kevin came home from work a little later. He greeted me with a kiss on the cheek, like he always did. "How are you doing, Barbara? How are you feeling today?" "I am doing well, sweetie. Just a little tired, but nothing out of the ordinary. You need to rest more. At your age, it is important to take care of your health. At my age, as if 71 were a death sentence, as if I should already have one foot in the grave, making their job easier." We ate dinner together that night, just like we did every night. They had been living with me ever since they got married 5 years ago. Back then, I thought it would be nice to have the company, to not be all alone in that big house in Lincoln Park. Now, I realized it had been a huge mistake, a mistake that could cost me my life. During dinner, I watched their every move, the way Emily cut my food into smaller pieces, because it is easier for you to chew, Mom. The way Kevin always offered to go grab my medication. "Let me go get it, Barbara. You just stay seated." Everything that used to look like care and affection now revealed darker intentions. How many times had they tried this before? How many times did they slip something into my food, my drinks, my pills, and I just did not notice? I started looking back on the last few months, the dizzy spells I had in September, the unexplained nausea in October, the time I almost passed out in the bathroom and they told me it was just my blood pressure fluctuating. Were they already poisoning me little by little? Was this an old plan and I was just now catching on because they were speeding up the process? That night was the longest of my life. I laid in bed, but I could not sleep. I kept imagining what would have happened if I had actually drank that tea. Would it hurt? How long would it take? Would they fake being sad when they found me dead? Would they frantically call 911, playing the part of the devastated daughter and son-in-law? The next morning, I woke up with a clear decision in my head. I was not going to die, and I was not going to let them win this game. But to do that, I needed to outsmart them. I needed to investigate, gather proof, and understand the full scope of this betrayal. The first step was checking my bank accounts. I booted up the computer in my bedroom and logged into my online banking. What I saw made my blood run cold. Over the last 6 months, there had been small withdrawals, anywhere from $2,000 to $5,000, always just a few days apart. Transfers I did not recognize. In total, almost $30,000 had vanished from my account. How was this possible? I was always so careful with my passwords. But then, I remembered. Emily had access to my computer. She always claimed she needed to use it because hers was running slow or she needed to print some paperwork for her job. She had seen my passwords. She had written them down, and she had been stealing from me for months. They were not just potential murderers, they were thieves. They had been draining my accounts little by little, all while planning my death to take the rest. I printed out all the bank statements and hid them in a folder buried in my closet. Then, I changed all my passwords. I set up complex passwords they would never guess in a million years. If they tried to make any more withdrawals, they were going to hit a brick wall. The next day, when Emily offered me my afternoon tea again, I accepted it with a smile. "Thank you, honey. You are so thoughtful." "It is nothing, Mom. You deserve all the care in the world." I took the mug to my room and poured the liquid into a small vial I had set aside specifically for this. I needed physical evidence. I did not know how I was going to get it tested yet, but I knew I had to save it. Over the rest of that week, I set up a routine. Every afternoon, Emily made the tea. Every afternoon, I pretended to drink it and stored the liquid in different vials, each marked with the date. By the end of the week, I had 7 samples. I also started paying very close attention to everything I ate and drank. I started consuming only food I prepared myself or that I watched being cooked from start to finish. When Emily offered me something, I would take it, but discreetly throw it out later. Throwing away food broke my heart, but losing my life sounded a lot worse. During the second week after my discovery, I gathered my courage and did something I never thought I would do. I hired a private investigator. I found an ad online for a discreet professional who handled family investigations right in downtown Chicago. I set up a meeting at a coffee shop far from my neighborhood. The detective was a guy in his 50s, very average-looking, the kind of person you forget 2 minutes after meeting them. Perfect for his line of work, I figured. I told him the whole story. He listened without interrupting, just jotting down a few notes in a small notepad. "What exactly do you want me to look into, ma'am?" he asked when I finished. "I want to know if they are drowning in debt. I want to know where the money they stole from me is going. I want to know if they have already consulted lawyers about probate. I want to know everything about their lives that I am clearly entirely in the dark about. And what about the substances in the tea? Do you want me to get those tested? Can you do that? I know a private lab that runs those kinds of toxicology screenings." "Yes, it will run you about $300 per sample." $300. It was expensive, but my life was worth far more than that. "I want you to test 3 samples, the most recent ones, and if it comes back positive for poison, then you tell me what the next step is." I handed him the 3 vials, along with a list of everything I knew about Emily and Kevin. Work addresses, license plate numbers, full names, social security numbers, everything. "I am going to need a week," he said. "I will be in touch." That week, I had to put on the performance of a lifetime, acting completely normal, chatting with them like nothing was wrong, accepting that damn poison tea and pretending to gulp it down. Every single day was psychological torture. Emily started commenting that I was looking paler, more tired. "Mom, I think you should go see the doctor. You do not look very well." Of course, she wanted me to go to the doctor. That way, when I turned up dead, there would be a recent record of medical visits, of me complaining about feeling sick. It was all flawlessly orchestrated. "I am fine, honey, just a little exhausted, but that is perfectly normal at my age. I am making you an appointment anyway. It is important to get regular checkups." She booked me an appointment with my regular physician, Dr. Robert, a man in his 60s who had been treating me at Mercy Hospital for over a decade. At the appointment a week later, he ran the standard routine tests. "Barbara, your test results are completely normal. Your blood pressure is slightly elevated, but nothing to lose sleep over. Your diabetes is perfectly managed. You are doing fantastic for your age. Doctor, can I ask you a question?" I took a gamble. If a 71-year-old person were to drop dead from a heart attack, would you request an autopsy? He looked at me with a very strange expression. "That depends. If the person had a history of heart issues, diabetes, hypertension, and lived alone or with family, probably not, unless there was some sort of foul play suspected. Why do you ask, Barbara?" "Oh, just curious. I saw a true crime show on television about it, but I knew I had planted a seed of doubt in his mind. Maybe that was a good thing. Maybe, if something did happen to me, He would remember this exact conversation. 7 days after my meeting with the detective, he called me. "Barbara, I need to speak with you in person. Can I swing by your house?" "No. I would rather we meet somewhere else. Same coffee shop as last time?" "Sure. Tomorrow at 10 o'clock in the morning?" That evening, I told Emily I was meeting up with an old coworker to catch up on some gossip. She barely paid any attention to me. She just nodded her head while scrolling on her phone. The detective showed up right on time. He was carrying a thick manila folder packed with documents. "Barbara, I have some good news and some bad news. Which do you want first?" "Give me the bad news." All 3 tea samples tested positive for digitalis in highly toxic doses. It is a compound found in certain plants, like foxglove. In tiny doses, it is prescribed as a heart medication. In large doses, it triggers arrhythmias and cardiac arrest. And it is virtually undetectable in standard autopsies, especially for someone with a history of heart issues. My hands began to tremble. I knew it all along, but hearing the actual confirmation just hit differently. And what is the good news? They are up to their eyeballs in debt. Your daughter has 2 credit cards maxed out, totaling nearly $80,000. Her husband took out a payroll loan that eats up 40% of his paycheck. They have missed their car payment 3 times in the last 6 months. And there is more. They visited 4 different real estate agencies in the past few weeks, asking how much your house would sell for. He opened the folder and slid some photos over to me. Pictures of Emily and Kevin walking in and out of real estate offices. Documents detailing their staggering debts. Credit card statements showing expensive clothes, high-end dinners, luxurious vacations to Hawaii. They have been living way beyond their means for years, the detective continued. And you have been their personal ATM. The $30,000 that vanished from your account went straight to paying minimum balances on those cards. But it was not enough to keep them afloat. They need more, a lot more. And by killing me, they would get it all? Exactly. I also found out your daughter reached out to an estate planning attorney 2 months ago. She wanted to know how to fast-track the probate process in the event of a natural death. Fast-track the probate process. As if I were nothing more than a bureaucratic hurdle standing between them and their payday. "What do you want to do with this information?" the detective asked. I took a deep breath. "I do not know yet, but I need to think this through very carefully. Can you hold on to all this evidence? Somewhere safe? I already made copies of everything. I keep the originals, and I am leaving a copy with you. But Barbara, yes, be extremely careful. Desperate people do desperate things. If they catch wind that you know," he did not have to finish the sentence. I understood perfectly well the kind of danger I was in. I returned home that day, carrying the weight of an unbearable truth. It was no longer just a suspicion, it was absolute certainty. My own daughter was poisoning me, and I held concrete proof in my hands. The question now was, what do I do with it? I spent days turning ideas over in my head. I kept pretending to drink the tea. I kept acting like I was completely clueless. But inside, I was plotting my revenge. Not a violent revenge, no, but a reckoning that would prove to them they had drastically underestimated the woman they thought they could just wipe off the map. First things first, protect my assets. I scheduled a meeting with my lawyer, Attorney Hayes, a professional I had known for years and trusted with my life. "Barbara, did you want to make a few tweaks to your will?" he asked, when I vaguely explained I needed to review my paperwork. "I want to do a lot more than that. I want to bulletproof everything I own." I laid out the entire story. I showed him the evidence. I saw the absolute shock wash over his face. "Good Lord, Barbara. You need to report this to the police immediately. I am going to press charges, but I have to protect myself first. If anything happens to me before I pull the trigger on this, I want to make absolutely sure they do not see a single dime." We worked through the changes together. First, I transferred the vast majority of my money into an account at a different bank, under the name of a shell company we set up. It was perfectly legal, just a smart way to shield the assets. Second, I completely rewrote my will. I left 80% of my entire estate to charities that care for abandoned elderly folks. The remaining 20% went to my nephew, Michael, my sister's son, a stand-up guy who had always been incredibly sweet to me. As for Emily, I left her exactly $1 and a letter explaining exactly why. But Barbara, Attorney Hayes warned, even if you change the will, if something happens to you, your daughter could contest it by claiming you were not in your right mind, which is exactly why I am going to get a comprehensive psychiatric evaluation. I want it on the official record that I am perfectly lucid and competent, and that is exactly what I did. I sat through evaluations with 3 different psychiatrists, all of them certifying my flawless mental health. I filed all the medical reports straight with Attorney Hayes. The second phase of my plan was a bit trickier. I wanted to catch Emily and Kevin red-handed, with bulletproof evidence that not even the slickest defense attorney in the country could fight. I bought hidden cameras online. Tiny little things, completely impossible to spot. I installed one in the kitchen, disguised inside a wall clock. Another one in the living room, tucked inside a picture frame. A third one covered the hallway. All of them recorded high-definition video and audio, automatically backing everything up to the cloud. It took me 2 solid weeks to get everything set up discreetly. Emily and Kevin had zero clue that their every move was being monitored. And then, I just played the waiting game. I did not have to wait long. On a Thursday afternoon, while I was supposedly taking a nap in my bedroom, the cameras caught everything. Emily was in the kitchen, brewing my tea. Kevin walked in. "How much longer do we have to keep doing this?" he asked, clearly frustrated. "I do not know. She should have passed away by now. I do not understand how she is holding on this long." "Are you positive you are using the right dosage?" "Yes." I looked into it heavily. Maybe she is just tougher than she looks. Or maybe she is not actually drinking it. There was a dead silence. I felt a chill run straight down my spine, even watching the playback later. They were starting to get suspicious. "Impossible!" Emily finally snapped. "I watch her drink it almost every single day, and when I do not see her, the mug is always completely empty later." "Well, then up the dosage. I am sick and tired of this. The debts keep piling up. I need that payout right now. I cannot raise it too much. It might leave traces they can catch in the autopsy." "What autopsy?" "She is 71. Diabetes? High blood pressure. Nobody is going to demand an autopsy." "Whatever, I am sticking to the current dose. A few more weeks, and it will be over. A few more weeks." They were discussing my murder with the exact same casual tone as someone planning a weekend trip to Ohio. After seeing that footage, I knew I had to move fast. I could not hold off much longer. They were getting desperate, and desperate people make mistakes. Or worse, they take drastic measures. I called Attorney Hayes again. I showed him the footage. "Barbara, this is more than enough for a criminal indictment. You have physical evidence, toxicology reports, video confessions. They are going to prison. I know. But before I go to the cops, I want to do one last thing." "What is that?" "I want them to know that I caught them. I want to look them in the eyes and see their reaction. I want them to feel a fraction of what I felt when I found out my own flesh and blood was trying to murder me." "Barbara, that could be incredibly dangerous. If they know that you know." "Which is exactly why I am going to do it in a crowded public place, with witnesses all around, and then I am walking straight from there to the police precinct." I mapped out every detail carefully. I booked a table for a family lunch at a high-end restaurant downtown, a spot Emily absolutely obsessed over but we rarely visited because it was insanely expensive. I told them I wanted to celebrate my birthday a little early, that I wanted to do something special, just the 3 of us. Emily was surprised, but thrilled. "Mom, what a wonderful idea. We would love that." I scheduled it for a Sunday, 2 weeks out. That bought me the time I needed to lock everything into place. I tipped off Attorney Hayes, I told the private investigator, and I let my nephew Michael in on the loop. They all knew exactly what I was about to do and were standing by for the fallout. Over those 2 weeks, I stuck to the script. I kept pretending to drink the tea, but I also started shifting my demeanor. I grew colder, more distant. I wanted them to sense that the ground was shifting beneath their feet, even if they could not quite put their finger on why. "Mom, is everything okay?" Emily asked me a few days before our lunch date. "You seem a little off." "I am doing fine, honey. Just feeling a bit pensive, doing a lot of reflecting on life, on the choices we make." "What kind of choices?" "All of them. The choice to become a mother, the choice to trust people, the choice to believe that family bonds are stronger than anything else. I saw a flicker of panic flash across her face, but she buried it quickly. You are getting awfully philosophical in your old age. Maybe. Or maybe I am just finally seeing things exactly as they are. The Sunday of the lunch finally arrived. I put on my absolute best clothes, a beautiful blue blouse Emily had gifted me last Christmas. The sheer irony was not lost on me. I styled my hair, I put on my lipstick. I wanted to look untouchable for what was about to go down. We pulled up to the restaurant at 11:30. It was a gorgeous establishment, complete with crisp white tablecloths and waiters in sharp uniforms. Emily and Kevin were in high spirits. They honestly thought this was just a nice lunch, a sweet little celebration for my birthday, the poor fools. We ordered our meals, making mindless small talk. They chatted about their jobs, about some mutual friends they had bumped into recently. I listened to every word with a polite, frozen smile, just waiting for the perfect opening. When dessert hit the table, I took a deep breath. It was showtime. Emily, Kevin, there is something we need to discuss. Sure, Mom. What is going on? First off, I want you to know how much I love Emily. I have always loved her. From the very second she was born, I dedicated my entire existence to her. I worked my fingers to the bone, juggling 2 or 3 jobs at a time, just to give her everything she could ever need. A good education, nice clothes, warm meals, endless affection. I did everything a mother could possibly do. Emily smiled, but I could see the confusion creeping into her eyes. I know that, Mom, and I appreciate it so much. Do you really appreciate it? My voice came out much colder than I had even planned. Are you truly grateful? Mom, what is going on? I reached into my purse and pulled out a large manila envelope. I dropped it right in the middle of the table. A few weeks ago, I overheard you two talking in the kitchen. I heard Emily saying that she had put medicine in my drink, that in a few days my body would just give out, that the doctor would chalk it up to heart failure. The silence that fell over the table was absolute. I watched every single drop of color drain from Emily's face. Kevin froze entirely, his fork hovering halfway to his mouth. Mom, I have no idea what you are talking about. Do not lie to me. My voice rose louder than I intended. A few people at the neighboring tables glanced over. I lowered my tone. Do not insult my intelligence by lying to my face right now. I heard every single word, and more than that, I have the proof. I ripped open the envelope and spread the documents out across the white tablecloth. Toxicology reports. Photographs of them walking into real estate offices. Bank statements, highlighting the money they had bled from my accounts. You have been poisoning me for weeks, slipping digitalis into my tea every single afternoon. Did you really think I would not notice? Do you honestly believe I am that stupid? Mom, this is just a huge misunderstanding. Emily was as white as a ghost. A misunderstanding? I have 3 separate tea samples professionally analyzed in a lab, every single one of them laced with lethal doses of poison. I have hidden camera footage of you two arguing about upping the dosage. I have a paper trail proving you were consulting probate lawyers about my estate. You mapped out my murder down to the very last detail. Kevin tried to stand up, but I cut him off instantly. Sit down. I am not finished. My voice was rock solid now. All the agony, all the boiling rage from the last few weeks was hardening into pure, icy resolve. $30,000. That is what you stole from my bank account. You bought designer clothes, 5-star dinners, luxury vacations, all funded by money you siphoned off me while you actively plotted to kill me for the rest of it. You absolutely disgust me, both of you. Mom, please. Emily was openly sobbing now. Crocodile tears, I thought to myself. The tears of a criminal who just got caught, not someone who actually felt remorse. Do not call me Mom. A mother raises, loves, and protects. And a daughter is supposed to honor, care for, and love her in return. You betrayed me in the most horrific way imaginable. You poisoned me. You robbed me. You planned my murder. I pulled out a second envelope. This is my brand new will and testament. You, too, are getting absolutely nothing. 0. Every last cent is going to charity and to my nephew Michael. Oh, and I changed all my account passwords. You are not going to be able to steal another dime from me. You cannot do that. Kevin finally choked out the words, his voice shaking with fury. I can, and I already did. And what is more, the second we walk out of those doors, I am heading straight to the police precinct. I am handing over every single piece of evidence. They are going to lock you in a cage for attempted murder in the first degree, felony fraud, and elder abuse. You could easily be looking at 10 to 20 years behind bars. Emily was weeping uncontrollably now. Mom, please do not do this. I am begging you. It was a massive mistake. We were just so desperate. The debts were drowning us. The debts that you racked up yourselves because you wanted to play rich when you were broke, buying garbage you could never afford, and your brilliant solution was to murder me. We were going to pay you back. By killing me? Emily, listen to the words coming out of your mouth. My voice finally cracked. For a brief second, the heartbroken mother spoke louder than the woman out for justice. You are my daughter, my only child. How could you do this? I did not want to, she gasped between sobs. But I was so desperate. The debt collectors were calling day and night, threatening to sue us into the ground. And you just had all that money sitting there. Money that I worked 60 years of my life to save up. Money I sweated for. Money I traded my youth and my health to earn. I sacrificed everything to build that safety net. And you felt completely entitled to it? Before the natural course of life even took me? By this point, the people sitting around us were not even pretending they were not eavesdropping. The entire restaurant had gone completely quiet, every single eye locked on our table. The absolute worst part of all of this, I continued, my voice steadying again but heavy with a profound, crushing sadness. It is not the money, it is not the assets. It is knowing that, in your eyes, my life was worth less than $300,000, that you would rather see me dead and buried than just ask me for help, that you could look me dead in the eye every single afternoon, hug me, call me your mother, while you were slowly poisoning me to death. Mom, I am telling you I told you not to call me that. I stood up and grabbed my purse. When I do pass away, and one day I will, because we all do, I want you to remember this exact moment. You had the chance to spend my final years right by my side, to make me happy, to be a real family. But you chose the payout, and for that choice, you are going to pay the price. I walked out of that restaurant with my head held high. My nephew Michael was waiting for me right outside on the sidewalk, exactly as we had planned. He wrapped me in a huge hug. Did you do it, Aunt Barbara? I did it. And now what? Now, we go straight to the district attorney. The police precinct was an old, run-down building with peeling paint and the distinct smell of damp concrete. I had never stepped foot inside one before. I never dreamed I would ever have to. The prosecutor assigned to the case was a man in his early 40s, Prosecutor Davis. He listened to my entire story with intense focus, analyzing every single document I slid across his desk. Miss Barbara, you have an incredibly airtight case here. Toxicology reports, video surveillance, bank statements. It is incredibly rare to see a victim come in this thoroughly prepared. I had the time to prepare, and I was terrified enough to be meticulous. I am going to file for the arrest warrants today. Your daughter and son-in-law are going to be taken into custody for attempted murder in the first degree. You understand you will have to testify in court? I know. And I am ready. I am also going to highly recommend an emergency restraining order. They will not be allowed anywhere near you. They live in my house. Not anymore. Once this order hits, they will be forcibly removed from the premises immediately. And that is exactly what happened. That very same night, the police showed up at my front door. Emily and Kevin were arrested right on the spot. Watching the steel handcuffs lock around my own daughter's wrists was easily one of the most agonizing sights of my entire life, but it was also one of the most necessary. They let them pack a few bags. The rest of their junk stayed behind. After the squad cars drove off, I was left totally alone in that house for the first time in 5 long years. The silence was deafening. I sat on the couch in the living room, just looking around at everything. Every single object held a memory. The framed photo of Emily as a little girl on the mantel. The armchair we picked out together. the reading lamp she bought me for Mother's Day. The house was soaked in memories. But now, every single one of those memories was poisoned by betrayal. I cried that night. I cried until I had nothing left, not because I was losing them from my life, but because I was losing the illusion that I ever had a real family. I grieved for the mother I was, who was so deeply undervalued. I grieved for the daughter I raised, who lost her humanity somewhere along the way. But beneath the tears, there was also an overwhelming sense of relief. I was alive. I had won. They did not succeed in killing me. The criminal trial dragged on for months. There were hearings, depositions, a parade of witnesses. Emily's defense attorney tried to spin a narrative that she was suffering from severe clinical depression, that she was not in her right mind, that her husband had manipulated her into it. Kevin's lawyer played the exact opposite card, claiming the entire murder plot was Emily's brainchild. In the end, the judge threw the book at both of them. Emily was sentenced to 8 years in state prison. Kevin got 6. They were also court-ordered to pay back the $30,000 they embezzled, plus punitive damages for emotional distress. It came out to a grand total of $150,000 that I knew deep down I would never actually see a dime of, but at least it was a matter of public record. While the trial was still wrapping up, I started entirely rebuilding my life. I sold the big house. It held way too many ghosts. I bought a much smaller, gorgeous, modern condo in a much nicer neighborhood. A completely clean slate. I also started seeing a therapist. I desperately needed to unpack everything that had happened. All the trauma, all the betrayal. Those therapy sessions were the absolute cornerstone of my recovery. Barbara, my therapist told me during one session, "You are in mourning. You are grieving the daughter you thought you had, the one you realized never actually existed. That is perfectly normal. You have to give yourself permission to feel that grief." And I did. I let myself feel it, but I also forced myself to look forward. I picked up old hobbies I had abandoned for years. I rejoined the choir down at my local church. I signed up for watercolor painting classes. I adopted a scrappy little dog I found at a local animal shelter, and I named him Sunny. He became my absolute best friend and loyal shadow. I also grew much closer to my nephew Michael. He was 35 years old, happily married, with 2 beautiful little kids. I started going over to their place, becoming a real part of this warm, loving family that welcomed me with open arms when my own flesh and blood tried to throw me away. "Aunt Barbara," Michael told me one afternoon, "you are an inspiration to all of us. Seeing your resilience, your sheer willpower to start completely over at 71 years old, it is incredible." I did not have a choice, Michael. It was either start over or let them put me in the ground, one way or another. There is always a choice. A lot of people in your shoes would have just thrown in the towel, let themselves turn bitter and angry at the world. You chose to actually live, and he was right. I had chosen life. I was not just surviving anymore. I was genuinely living. At 72, I did something I had always dreamed of doing, but never had the guts to actually pull off. I took a solo vacation. I hopped on a flight straight to Florida. I spent 2 glorious weeks walking the beaches, trying exotic seafood, striking up conversations with total strangers. It was incredibly liberating. I discovered that I actually had an entire identity outside of being a mother, that my worth was not just tied to raising a child, but in simply being Barbara, a woman with her own tastes, her own wild dreams, her own vibrant life. A year and a half after Emily was locked up, I got a letter in the mail from her. It was postmarked from the state penitentiary, 3 handwritten pages in a shaky scrawl. I just stared at that envelope for a very long time before I finally ripped it open. A part of me did not even want to read it. A part of me was terrified of what words were waiting inside. But in the end, human curiosity won out. "Mom," the letter started, and my chest seized up just seeing that word in her handwriting. "I know I have absolutely no right to call you that. I know I do not deserve your time, and I definitely do not deserve your forgiveness. But I have to write this down. I need you to know that I regret what I did every single waking second of my life." I kept reading, my vision blurring with tears. Sitting here in this cell, I have had a lot of time to think, to truly grasp the sheer monstrosity of what I tried to do to you. There are 0 excuses, There is no justification. I was selfish, greedy, and purely cruel. I tried to take the life of the very woman who gave me mine. There is no greater sin than that. I think about you every single day, about how perfectly fine everything used to be, about how hard you broke your back to give me the world, about how I took every ounce of love you gave me and threw it in the trash. I completely understand if you can never bring yourself to forgive me. I understand if you never want to look at my face again, but I just needed you to know, I am so sorry. From the absolute bottom of my soul, I am so deeply sorry. The letter went on for 2 more pages, endlessly detailing her remorse, explaining how prison had fundamentally shattered her worldview, how clearly she saw the evil she had committed. I folded the letter back up very slowly. I did not cry. I just sat there in the quiet, lost in thought. Forgive. The word kept bouncing around inside my skull. My therapist had told me time and time again, Barbara, forgiveness is not for the person who wronged you. It is for you. It is the only way you can keep moving forward without dragging the heavy anchor of hatred behind you. But could I actually forgive her? Could I honestly forgive the person who actively tried to murder me? It took me weeks to figure it out. I talked it through with my therapist, with the pastor at my church, with Michael. Everybody had a different take. Some swore that forgiveness was the only path to inner peace. Others argued that certain acts are simply unforgivable. Emily, I finally wrote back. I received your letter. I have read it several times over. I want you to know that I do believe you are remorseful. I believe that these past months, sitting in a cell, have made you realize the true gravity of your actions. But realizing you were wrong does not magically erase what happened. Being sorry does not undo the damage you caused. I forgive you. I forgive you because holding on to this rage is rotting me from the inside out, and I am choosing my own peace of mind above everything else. But forgiveness does not mean amnesia. It does not mean we can ever go back to having the relationship we used to have. Because that mother and that daughter died the very first afternoon you slipped poison into my tea. I truly hope you manage to rebuild your life when you finally get out of there. I hope you find a much better path. I hope you become a fundamentally better human being. But that path is never going to cross with mine again. I will not accept any visitations, and I will not maintain any contact with you. This letter is my final goodbye. Take care of yourself, Emily, and please learn from your terrible mistakes. Barbara. I dropped that letter in the mailbox and instantly felt like a 10-ton weight had been lifted off my shoulders. It was not a grand reconciliation. It was closure. It was me firmly closing that chapter of my life forever. Over the next few months, I threw myself entirely into my new routine. I started a little tailoring business out of my condo. Nothing crazy, just doing custom alterations for a few loyal clients. It was something I was passionate about, and it gave my days real purpose. I also started volunteering at a local senior living facility. While I was there, I met so many folks with stories that sounded terrifyingly similar to mine. Elderly people who had been entirely abandoned by their own flesh and blood, financially drained by greedy relatives, some even suffering from physical abuse. It hit me that my nightmare was not an isolated incident. There was a silent, sprawling epidemic of elder abuse happening right under our noses, and the vast majority of victims were suffering in total silence. Barbara, a 78-year-old woman at the center, told me one afternoon, "You were incredibly lucky you caught them in time. A lot of us in here did not figure it out until it was far too late." I started leveraging my own story to help others. I began giving talks at local community centers, teaching folks how to spot the red flags of financial elder abuse, stressing how crucial it is to legally protect your assets, and urging them to find the courage to report it to the authorities, even if the abuser is sitting across from them at the Thanksgiving table. Family is not just the people who share your DNA, I would tell the crowds. Family are the people who love you, who respect you, who genuinely value your presence. And if someone fails to do that, they do not deserve the title of family, regardless of what your bloodline says. Word of my story started to spread. The local Chicago papers ran a few articles on me. I did some sit-down interviews, always keeping the focus on raising awareness for other seniors about the dangers out there and the rights they hold. "Are you not afraid of any sort of retaliation, ma'am?" a young reporter asked me once. Retaliation from who? My daughter is sitting in a state penitentiary, And even if she were walking the streets, I absolutely refused to live my life in fear. I experienced enough sheer terror when I thought my own child was going to poison me to death. I live my life completely free now, and it was the absolute truth. For the first time in decades, I felt genuinely, unapologetically free. When I turned 73, something happened that I never saw coming in a million years. I met a man. His name was Thomas, a 75-year-old widower who sang in the exact same church choir as I did. He was a perfect gentleman, incredibly polite, quick to smile, with a fascinating life story. He had been a high school history teacher for 40 years. It started out with just innocent chats after our choir rehearsals. Then he asked me if I wanted to grab a cup of coffee. Then he took me out to dinner. Slowly, carefully, we built a beautiful friendship that organically blossomed into something much deeper. "Barbara," he said to me one evening, as we were taking a stroll through Millennium Park, "can I ask you a rather personal question? Tell me, do you think you could ever truly trust someone again, after everything you went through?" I chewed on the question before answering. "I honestly do not know, Thomas. I really do not." That trust was shattered in such a profound, deep way, but at the same time, I refuse to spend the rest of the time I have left on this earth being terrified of everyone I meet. I completely understand. I went through a massive betrayal myself, though obviously very different from yours. My first wife had an affair with my absolute best friend. It took me years before I could ever open up and trust a woman again. And did you finally manage to? I did. I ended up getting remarried. We were wonderfully happy for 20 years until she lost her battle with cancer. Every single moment with her was worth the risk. Our relationship moved at a slow, comfortable pace with absolutely zero rushing. We did not move in together. We both kept our own condos, our own sacred independence. But we spent our days together. We took trips. We shared hot meals, deep conversations, and just did life side by side. It was the exact kind of beautiful, peaceful romance you can only really experience in your golden years. No ticking clocks, no heavy societal pressures, no wild expectations beyond simple companionship and genuine, sincere affection. "Do you know what the most beautiful thing about you is?" Thomas told me one afternoon. "You took a horrific personal tragedy and forged it into pure strength. You refused to let them destroy you. You completely reinvented yourself." I did not have any other choice. There is always a choice, Barbara. You chose to live. A lot of folks in your exact situation would have chosen to just give up. He was entirely right. I had actively chosen to live, and I was living life to the absolute fullest. My 74th birthday was incredibly special. Michael threw together a massive surprise party for me. He gathered all my friends from the choir, the ladies from my sewing circle, the folks I volunteered with at the senior center. Thomas was right by my side, of course. It was a stunning evening, absolutely packed with roaring laughter, overflowing love, and genuine, pure joy. When it was time to cut the cake, I looked around the room, and it suddenly hit me. This was my family, not bound by blood, but bound by choice. A room full of people who loved me for exactly who I was, not for what I had in my bank account. "A toast," Michael announced, raising his glass high in the air. "To Aunt Barbara. Without a doubt, the strongest woman I have ever known. The woman who proved to every single one of us that it is never, ever too late to start over, to demand your own dignity, and to truly live." Everyone in the room raised their glasses. I was crying, but this time, they were tears of pure bliss. Real, unadulterated happiness. Something I had not felt in a very long time. That night, lying comfortably in my bed with Sonny curled up fast asleep at my feet, I thought about everything that had transpired over the last few years. The crushing betrayal, the agonizing pain, the suffocating fear. But I also thought about the triumph, the complete rebirth, the beautiful new reality I had carved out for myself with my own 2 hands. I did not regret calling the cops on Emily for a single second. I did not regret choosing my own survival over a mother's blind devotion, because I finally realized that true love would never, ever demand that I sacrifice my life, my dignity, or my safety. Emily was released from state prison when I was 76 years old. She served 5 years behind bars and was granted parole. I found out through Michael, who had been keeping a close eye on the court dockets. She wants to speak with you, Aunt Barbara. Absolutely not. She claims she is a changed woman, that she just wants to apologize to your face. Michael, I genuinely hope she actually has changed. I sincerely hope she manages to put the pieces of her life back together. But I refuse to be a part of that life. I have already moved on. She needs to figure out how to do the exact same thing. He completely understood and fully respected my boundary. I eventually heard through the grapevine that Emily packed up and moved to a completely different state. She landed a modest job working on the floor of a garment factory. She was trying to build a new life from scratch. Good for her. Honestly, I mean that. But she can do it far, far away from me. Some people might call me cold, say I have a heart of stone, argue that a mother is supposed to forgive absolutely anything. But let me tell you something. Forgiving is not the same thing as forgetting. Forgiving does not mean you have to put your life in the line of fire ever again. Forgiving is simply letting go of the toxic rage, but it is also about setting ironclad, healthy boundaries. And my boundary was crystal clear. I did not want Emily anywhere near my life. Today, at 77 years old, I look back over my shoulder and see a path I never in a million years thought I would walk. From 71 to 77, I flipped my entire existence upside down. I did not do it for fun in the beginning. I did it because I had to survive. But out of that pure necessity, a brand new version of myself was born, a version that is infinitely stronger, fiercely independent, and so much happier. My daily routine now is wonderfully simple, but it fills my soul. I wake up bright and early, brew a pot of coffee, and take Sunny out for a nice long walk. I spend a few hours working on my tailoring projects. In the afternoons, I either head down to volunteer at the center, or I meet up with Thomas for a cup of coffee, a stroll through the park, or just a good long chat. Twice a week, I head to my choir rehearsals. Once a month, I pack a bag and travel somewhere I have never been before. Sometimes Thomas comes with me. Sometimes Michael and his family tag along, and sometimes I just go completely solo. I discovered that I absolutely adore traveling by myself. The sheer freedom to do whatever I want, whenever I want, without having to explain myself to a single living soul. Financially, I do not have a single worry in the world. The money I managed to save, the assets I fought tooth and nail to protect, are all safely invested. I live entirely off the interest, without ever having to touch the principal balance. And when my time finally comes, I will leave behind a legacy that supports causes that actually matter, and goes to the people who genuinely care about me. I have learned some incredibly invaluable lessons over these past 6 years. I learned that family is far more than just the blood running through your veins. I learned that mutual respect is the absolute bedrock of any meaningful relationship. I learned that it is never, ever too late to pack up and start completely over. I learned that human dignity does not have a price tag. I learned that there are countless people out there just like me. Grandparents who are being financially bled dry, mentally abused, and physically mistreated by their own flesh and blood. And I learned that we can actively fight back against it by raising our voices, by sharing our darkest stories, and by empowering other seniors to stand up and protect themselves. That is exactly why I am sitting here telling you my story today, so that other older folks out there know they are not alone. You have fundamental rights, and you deserve absolute respect. And it is never, under any circumstances, too late to stand up and choose your own dignity. If you are going through something even remotely similar to this, if you have a gut feeling that someone is siphoning your money, if you are genuinely terrified of the very people who are supposed to be taking care of you, let me make this crystal clear. You have the power to stop it. Document every single detail. Seek out professional legal counsel. Trust your gut instincts. And if it comes down to it, find the courage to walk away entirely. Losing my daughter was, without question, the most excruciating pain I have ever endured in my life. But discovering that the daughter I thought I had was just a mirage, that the deep love I felt was never actually returned the way I deserved, that realization was profoundly liberating. It was agonizing, yes, but it set me free. Today, when I look at my reflection in the mirror, I see a radically different woman than the one staring back at me 6 years ago. My hair is a lot whiter. The wrinkles are a bit deeper. But I also see undeniable strength. I see gritty resilience. I see a woman who survived an ordeal that most people would consider completely unsurvivable. And I see a woman who is happy. Truly, deeply happy. Thomas actually asked me to marry him just last month. At 77 and 79 years of age, respectively, some folks might think it is a little bit silly, but to us, it makes all the sense in the world. We are not going to move in together, not by a long shot. But we want to officially celebrate our commitment to one another, our deep love, and our unwavering companionship. Barbara, Thomas told me when he popped the question, I want to spend whatever years I have left on this earth standing next to a woman who chose to live, even when giving up would have been the easiest thing in the world. A woman who inspires me to be a better man every single day. I told him yes. And in exactly 3 months, we are going to have a beautiful, tiny ceremony, surrounded only by our closest friends and our deeply cherished, chosen family. Sometimes, my mind still wanders over to Emily. I wonder how she is holding up, if she truly did change her ways, if she ever managed to find some sliver of peace. I do not think about it with any sort of nostalgia or any burning desire to see her face again. It is more like the fleeting curiosity you feel when you hear about the life of a total stranger. Because, at the end of the day, that is exactly what she became to me, a complete stranger who just happens to share my DNA. I genuinely wish her the best, from a very safe distance, but our paths are never going to cross again. And that is perfectly fine. I am completely at peace with it. My final message to anyone reading this story: your life is worth infinitely more than any inheritance, any material possession, or any toxic relationship, even if that relationship is with your own family. Protect yourself, know your worth, and if you have to, find the unshakable courage to start your life over from scratch, no matter how old you are. I started entirely over at 71 years of age, and these last few years have hands down been the absolute best years of my entire life. Not because of the material things I have, not because of any massive worldly achievements, but simply because of the pure, unadulterated freedom of living my life completely without fear, surrounded by people who genuinely, fiercely love me. If I could do it, you absolutely can too. Life goes on, and it can be incredibly beautiful against all odds. If you enjoyed this story, please hit the like button on this video and subscribe to the channel. Drop a comment down below letting us know what you thought, and share this video with anyone who might need to hear this message. And if you truly love the content we make, please consider becoming a member of our channel to get access to exclusive content and to help us keep bringing you stories that touch the heart. Thank you so much for watching, and we will see you next time. Subtitles provided by the Amara.org community.